What happens when a flight attendant discriminates against a passenger? What if this wasn't just any passenger, but a woman who could flip the whole situation upside down? Well, this shocking story shows how things can take an unexpected turn. Imagine being kicked out of your first class seat for no clear reason, then having your dignity tested in front of dozens of passengers. It sounds unbelievable, right? But that's exactly what happened to a black woman on a routine flight. She was told to leave her first class seat and move to the back of the plane. But just when everyone thought the story was over, something incredible happened. A twist that left everyone on board completely shocked. This wasn't just an ordinary moment. In fact, what happened next turned the entire flight upside down. In this video, you'll not only learn what led to this shocking incident, but you'll also discover how this woman's calm and quiet response had everyone on the plane and even the airline rethinking their decisions. You won't believe how one act of resilience sparked a chain of events that left the crew and passengers speechless. So stick around, because this is a story that will make you question what truly happens when the unexpected takes flight. Trust me, you won't want to miss the twist at the end. It was just a regular flight, the kind we've all been on a dozen times. People were settling into their seats, a few checking the in-flight magazines, others scrolling through their phones, while the cabin crew moved down the aisles preparing for takeoff. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. But for Sarah, this wasn't just any flight. She had been waiting for this moment for weeks. As she stepped into the first-class cabin, she couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and excitement. It was her first time flying in this section of the plane, and she'd worked hard for it, a special occasion, something she'd been dreaming about for months. Sarah had saved up bit by bit for this luxury. Every dollar was earned through long hours of hard work. Now here she was about to experience the kind of comfort and service she'd only seen in movies. A plush seat, extra legroom, the promise of a peaceful, quiet flight away from the hustle and bustle of the economy class. For Sarah, this was a celebration of her success, a personal milestone one she'd earned. The anticipation buzzed in the air as she settled into her seat, adjusting her headphones and sinking into the plush cushion, ready for the smooth ride ahead. It was the perfect start to what she hoped would be a relaxing journey. As Sarah settled deeper into her seat, she felt a sense of relief wash over her. The moment she'd been waiting for was finally here. She adjusted her seatbelt, looked out the window, and took in the luxury of her surroundings, the wide, comfortable seat, the extra legroom, and the soft lighting of the cabin. It was a moment of peace before the flight began. But then she started to sense something wasn't quite right. The sound of footsteps approaching her all grew louder. Sarah glanced up and saw a flight attendant walking towards her. At first, it didn't seem unusual. The staff was making their rounds, greeting passengers, ensuring everyone was settled in. But there was something about this flight attendant's expression. The woman's face was tight, almost rigid, and her eyes darted nervously around the cabin. As she stopped beside Sarah's seat, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The flight attendant hesitated for a second, her lips pressing together in a way that seemed almost apologetic. Then she spoke. "Excuse me," she began, her voice a little too stern. "I'm afraid you need to move to the economy section." Sarah blinked, taken aback. "Excuse me," she replied, her voice confused. She had to have misheard. After all, she was sitting in the first-class section, and she had every right to be there. "Why?" she asked, trying to make sense of the situation. But the flight attendant's answer only left her more confused. "You need to move to the economy section," the attendant repeated. "It's company policy." Sarah's mind raced. She scanned the cabin. No one else was being asked to move. No one else seemed to be in any sort of trouble. Why was she the only one being singled out? "But why? I paid for this seat." "I'm in first class," Sarah said, her voice a little shaky now. She couldn't understand what was happening. The situation felt wrong, but it was happening so quickly she barely had time to process it. The flight attendant gave a tight-lipped smile and repeated the same words. It's company policy. But there was no clear explanation, no reasonable justification for the request. It didn't add up. Sarah's confusion turned into disbelief. This couldn't be real. The flight attendant was standing there as if nothing was out of the ordinary, asking her to leave a seat she had every right to occupy. And there was no explanation. Just a vague, unhelpful phrase, company policy. Sarah felt a knot form in her stomach. There was a sense of unease that grew inside her, a feeling that the situation was more than just a mistake. The flight attendant's tone was sharp, her body language defensive. This didn't feel like an innocent mistake. It felt deliberate, personal even. Sarah looked up at the flight attendant's face, trying to gauge if she was being unfairly targeted. The uncomfortable silence stretched between them. It felt like more than just a seating issue. It felt like something deeper, something that Sarah couldn't fully put into words at that moment. The way the attendant spoke to her, the way she was being asked to move without any explanation, made it seem as though Sarah's presence in first class was somehow wrong. Was it about her race? Was it because she was a black woman in a seat that society often reserved for others? Sarah had no proof, but the thought lingered in her mind. The whole situation felt more personal than just a policy issue. There was something about it that didn't sit right. As Sarah tried to collect her thoughts, the attendant stood firmly by her side, waiting for her to comply. The other passengers were busy with their own things, but Sarah could sense their eyes on her. Was anyone else noticing what was happening? The flight attendant's stance didn't change. She didn't back down. It was clear that she expected Sarah to move without question. But Sarah wasn't going to be so easily pushed around. As the flight attendant stood there waiting for Sarah to comply, something inside Sarah shifted. The tension in the air was thick, and the unfairness of the situation was starting to build. But Sarah didn't let her emotions take over. She took a deep breath and reminded herself that reacting angrily wouldn't solve anything. Rather than raise her voice or argue with the attendant, Sarah kept her composure. She knew that getting upset wouldn't help her case. Instead, she chose to act with grace and dignity. Slowly, she stood up from her first-class seat, a calm determination in her movements. She didn't rush. She didn't shout. She simply gathered her belongings, the small items that had been set neatly beside her, and without a word, she walked to the back of the plane. The other passengers around her didn't seem to know what to make of it. Some watched with raised eyebrows. Others seemed confused, but none of them spoke up. Sarah wasn't looking for attention or sympathy. She was making a point. As she passed through the aisles, her calmness seemed to have a ripple effect. Her quiet confidence was more powerful than any confrontation could have been. She didn't need to argue or make a scene. She had already taken control of the situation. But this was where things got interesting. While most of the passengers had assumed this would be the end of it, something else was about to unfold. Sarah wasn't just another regular passenger. She wasn't just someone who had paid for a first-class seat and been wronged. No, Sarah was an influential businesswoman, someone with connections far beyond the flight crew or even the airline. 10 minutes later, a surprising turn of events started to unfold. Sarah's calm, collected response wasn't just about getting her seat back. It was a message, one that would reach much further than anyone on that plane could have anticipated. Behind the scenes, as Sarah sat in the back of the plane, a few things were happening that no one could see. The airline's upper management had been notified, and they were now taking a much closer look at the situation. Sarah wasn't a random passenger. She had the ear of some of the most influential people in the industry. Her network was vast, and it extended well beyond this flight. What followed was nothing short of extraordinary. Sarah's quiet dignity, her refusal to react in anger, had set something in motion. What seemed like a small, isolated incident on a single flight quickly turned into a much larger issue that the airline couldn't ignore. As Sarah sat in the back of the plane, waiting quietly for the situation to unfold, what most passengers didn't know was that she wasn't just another traveler. She wasn't just someone flying first class for the first time. Sarah's calm demeanor and graceful response weren't the only things that made her stand out. Sarah had the attention of some very powerful people. She wasn't just a regular businesswoman. She was someone with significant influence, someone who had the ear of the airline's CEO and held an important role within the very company that owned the airline. She had connections that spanned industries, and her reputation for handling situations with poise and professionalism preceded her. Her connections were not something she flaunted, but today they would be her unexpected ally. While Sarah sat quietly in her new seat, the wheels were already in motion. The airline's senior staff had been alerted to the incident almost immediately. Within minutes, flight attendants were given clear instructions. The message was simple. They needed to apologize to Sarah. The hires weren't just concerned about getting her back in her first-class seat. They were far more focused on something deeper: accountability. The airline couldn't afford to let something like this slip through the cracks. They knew that when someone of Sarah's stature got involved, the repercussions could be serious. This wasn't just about a seating mix-up or a miscommunication. This was about the kind of treatment passengers should expect from a reputable airline, no matter who they were. As soon as the apology was delivered, a high-ranking member of the airline's team called Sarah directly. The tone was apologetic, but also urgent. They couldn't allow this kind of situation to escalate further, especially with someone like Sarah at the center of it. They promised swift action and reassured her that steps would be taken to ensure this would never happen again. Meanwhile, on the plane, the atmosphere had completely shifted. The other passengers, who had been silently watching, began to murmur among themselves. The flight attendants, who had once been so confident in asking Sarah to move, now seemed nervous, almost apologetic. They had seen firsthand how Sarah's quiet response had taken control of the situation. What started as a simple request had now turned into a lesson in grace, power, and accountability. Everyone on board was in shock. They had witnessed something that was far more than just a disagreement over a seat. They saw how one woman's composed demeanor, backed by her undeniable influence, had forced a major company to change its course in real time. It was a powerful reminder of the impact a single person could have, even in the most unexpected of circumstances. The flight crew, once so sure of themselves, now had to face the consequences of their actions. They had underestimated Sarah, and in doing so, they had learned a lesson about respect and accountability. It wasn't just about getting a seat back. It was about recognizing that certain actions carry weight, and that sometimes the quietest person in the room has the most power. After the apology, the situation took a swift turn. The airline's response was clear and immediate. Sarah was upgraded back to her first-class seat, the very one she had originally been forced to leave. The crew that had made the mistake was given a stern reminder about how important it was to treat every passenger with respect, regardless of their background or status. This wasn't just a minor issue. It was a lesson in professionalism that would resonate within the airline for a long time. But it wasn't just about Sarah getting her seat back. The ripple effect from this incident began to spread far beyond the cabin. Her actions, the way she had handled the situation with such grace, had left a lasting impression on everyone aboard. The passengers who had witnessed the whole ordeal began talking among themselves. Many of them shared Sarah's sentiments about the unfair treatment she had endured, and it sparked conversations about how such incidents should never happen in the first place. It wasn't just about one woman being wronged, it was about a larger issue that could affect anyone. The incident served as a wake-up call to those who had been passive observers, urging them to speak up the next time they saw something unfair happening. Sarah's quiet strength became a model for others. People who had been silent, unsure of what to do, or how to respond, now realized that change could be made even with just one voice. Her ability to maintain her dignity and use her influence without losing control had inspired a wave of empowerment among the passengers. The airline, recognizing the need for change, took immediate action. The company publicly addressed the incident, apologizing for the mistake and acknowledging the larger issue of racial and social respect. More importantly, they announced new measures aimed at preventing similar situations in the future. The airline pledged to implement stricter diversity training for their staff, ensuring that every employee would be educated on how to treat all passengers equally, no matter their background. The ripple effect also extended to the airline's internal operations. Staff across various departments were reminded of the company's core values: inclusivity, respect, and fairness. Training programs were revamped to focus on ensuring that every passenger felt valued and that employees understood the responsibility they held in shaping the company's reputation. What had started as a single unfair moment for Sarah had turned into an opportunity for the airline to reflect, learn, and grow. Her actions not only forced an immediate resolution, but sparked broader changes that would impact future passengers, ensuring that such a situation wouldn't be repeated. This isn't just a story about a woman getting kicked out of first class. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes standing up for yourself in the right way can create real change. Sarah's grace and dignity in the face of unfair treatment sparked a series of events that not only affected her, but led to lasting changes within the airline. It shows us that even in the most difficult moments, we can make a difference by staying true to our values. What would you have done in Sarah's position? Do you think she handled it the right way? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more real-life moments that will leave you inspired, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an incredible story. Thanks for watching.